Hello everyone, this is part 13 of What If Naruto Was Born in the Uzumaki clan, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Nagato and Akeno were speechless as silent tears fell from their eyes. The rest of Domino Squad were shocked to say the least as Hanzo retold them the fact that many Uzumaki were still alive and currently held prisoners of Kumo within Azuchiogakur. However, Galatea was the one to ask an important question. "Where is Naruto?" asked the blonde, former Uzumaki. "He went to gather his allies," replied Hanzo frankly. "He has allies?" asked Kyusuke and Daibatsu in surprise. Konan and Akeno both narrowed their eyes on seeing Yahiko look away. Nagato was the same, and they had enough of secrets to deal with. The two boys were surprised when they were grabbed by the collar of their shirt by each girl. Akeno stared furiously at Nagato while Konan did the same with Yahiko. "Out with it," hissed Akeno. She was shocked when the usually submissive Nagato gave her a rough push and glared at her heatedly. "No." Konan was surprised as well, which only made her stare pointedly at Yahiko. But even this boy stood his ground and held his silence. Hanzo was not surprised that Naruto had managed to gain the loyalty of these two boys. "What did you say?" asked Akeno angrily. "You don't own us, Akeno. If Naruto has not told you anything, then you don't need to know. And I won't betray his trust, even for you," growled Nagato, and could feel his own Uzumaki temper rising in a long time. "We want to help him, but we can't do that unless we know what we are getting into," pointed Konan, earning a scoff from Yahiko. "There is something called privacy, Konan. He did not ask us any questions when we asked him to fight Iwa for us, and now when he needs us most, I'm not about to enter into a pissing contest. Naruto needs my help, and as his friend and comrade, my sword is his to use without any question," promised Yahiko fiercely. Those strong words managed to win over Kyusuke and Daibatsu as they both came forward and made Konan leave Yahiko's collar. "This is not the time to fight," urged Daibatsu patiently. "We can always ask questions after. But for now we must stay united if we are to save the Uzumaki," suggested Kyusuke. Their patience worked as Konan backed down with a heavy sigh. There were many things she didn't know at the moment and it frustrated her, but she knew that if the Uzumaki were alive, then Naruto would go to save them. And without help, he would. And that scared her. She couldn't help but be shocked on discovering how she had started to feel for the boy. The same person she had once looked at with mistrust, but over the months she had seen who he was underneath, and it made her want to protect him. She looked at Akeno and saw the girl having the same look in her eyes. They both hated secrets, especially ones that were important, but at the same time they would fight and if necessary if it meant Naruto could stay alive. Galatea, Mifune and Hanzo all saw the same squad that once couldn't trust each other were now fighting for each other. They were standing united in the face of a challenge as great as this. And the AM leaders could see it was one boy who had brought them all together. If Hanzo ever had doubts about these children being capable of leading his nation to a great future, they were removed now. They all were different and had varying opinions. They fought like dogs, but when it came to one of their own, they now stood before him as wolves eager to defend their pack. So he asked them just one thing. "Are you ready to go and fight for your commander?" 6 loud thumps to the sea was his answer. Galatea and Mifune both shared an affirmative nod as Salamander Hanzo got up from his seat and looked them all in the eye. "Then let us make history." Akatsuki's secret hideout. Kisame was not pleased. For in front of him, he could see the entire Akatsuki mercenary army preparing for a war. A war that they had no hope of winning and was in reality just a waste of lives. He gave another sharp glance at the man who had arranged such a folly. He had sent the information about the Uzumaki prisoners to Naruto to keep him informed. Never had he imagined the boy to act so impulsively, but then again he should have thought about how protective the boy was towards his clan. It was his greatest weakness according to Kisame. But wrong or not, he was still the leader and the one with the vision. Kisame had no choice but to follow this course of action. Naruto had even freely said that if he didn't want to join, he was free to leave. But Kisum knew doing that in this crucial hour would make him lose all the respect he had gained in the boy's eyes. And perhaps a small part of him was eager to see how powerful the boy had become since their last battle against Konoha. Kisum knew something was different about the boy because despite going against impossible odds he seemed confident that he would emerge victorious. It was this confidence of the leader that had energized the Akatsuki troops to prepare for war against the largest military in the world. Whatever the result of this battle, Akatsuki would no longer be able to remain in the shadows after that. Or perhaps Naruto could show them another miracle. The boy had a habit of creating those with his sheer strength and tactful mind. At least the cult members were overjoyed at the prospect of being able to spill a hell of lot more B in honor of the Dark Lord. Kisum had thought himself to be a B maniac, but Hiden and his cult brothers had stolen that feat from him. The only thing Kisum found acceptable was the fact that despite the different opinions Naruto was still wearing the ghoulish mask Kisum had given to him as a gift. Combine that with the beastly white wolf atop which the boy was sitting made him seem truly menacing. Feeling a set of eyes watching him, Naruto turned around and made his wolf march towards Kisum. I see you still don't approve of this, said Naruto with a frown. We are partners. I am free to voice my opinion, countered Kisum with a smile, which in turn made Naruto smirk. That you are. What will happen to our revolution if we are defeated? Or if you are taken captive or in battle? Asked Kisum seriously. That won't happen, promised Naruto. You think so? Asked Kisum skeptically. Watch me. Overconfidence doesn't suit you, chastised Kisum, earning a nod from the young redhead. The Kiri swordsman saw that same confident look on that boy's face. Something was up, a secret hand the boy was yet to reveal. Despite his emotions for his clan, Kisum knew he was not mad enough to think he could win against a 1,000 Kumo ninjas with just half that many Akatsuki. Should I expect some unexpected intervention? Asked Kisum knowingly. Maybe. Kisum was most curious at the sight of the entire Akatsuki army mounting on horses. These sort of animals were usually used by the private army of great daimyos and not shinobi. But then again, these creatures traveled faster than man and time was of great essence. We are ready, my lord, reported Hiden eagerly, a big grin easily visible on the man's face. Naruto nodded as he unleashed his sword and Kisum didn't miss the Uzumaki symbol on the blade's hilt. As the boy raised his sword the battle cry of the entire Akatsuki followed after him. Despite their opposing views, Kisum couldn't help but smile as he noticed the change in him. When they first met he was just a cornered dog that was attacking anyone that threatened him and his loved ones. The moment he stopped being a dog and took control over Hiden and his cult he became a Dark Lord. The moment he raised his sword against Konoha he became a leader. As Kisum rode atop his own horse alongside the Akatsuki army who were on their own horses as well, all their eyes were fixed upon the lone warrior sitting upon that giant wolf. Bastard or not, Naruto was still an Uzumaki. When he ran from a zoo, he was just a boy. And now as he returned back to his home, Kisum knew without doubt that he returned a man. Konoha. Minato warily watched as Kushina Uzumaki marched towards the gates of Konoha. On his side stood Orochimaru along with 2 squads of Anbu Black Ops. Looking at the redhead Minato could see she had chosen to wear her Konoha Junin uniform. Her Konoha headband was shining proudly on her forehead and it made his heart swell with pride. She may resent the village but that would never get in the way of her duty. She still had her pride as a ninja left in her. Her face remained void of a single emotion as she stepped beside the men around her. Orochimaru also came closer. Being the squad leader it was his order that would start their journey. How long would it take us to travel to Izu? Asked Orochimaru. A week on foot. But if I use my Harashin for shorter distances we can reach there in 3 days, explained Minato, and drew quite surprised and relieved looks from the Anbu teams. Ninja or not, nobody liked long journeys when they had the yellow flash for quick jumps. Impressive, so you have marked your seals across our lands till Izu, even till their borders? Asked Orochimaru with the barest hint of respect. A few inside Izu's lands as well. If Orochimaru appreciated Minato's tact before, he was now fully impressed with the young man's cunning. Rival or not, Orochimaru could respect an intelligent move. I underestimated you, Minato-kun, praised Orochimaru, even as he narrowed his eyes at the blonde man. This man was not to be trifled with easily that Orochimaru pledged to himself on this day. Kushina and the Anbus could feel the palpable tension between the two men. There was no K-intent leaking from either of them, but the sheer intensity with which they two men were staring at each other was making the rest of the squad nervous. She had to act even if she didn't want anything to do with either of these men. One was her former lover who had broken her heart, and the other gave her the creeps. Reluctantly, she placed her hand on Minato's arm, which drew a surprised look from him. "If it doesn't tire you much," she suggested, and could see he was more than happy to oblige her request. "Not at all," replied Minato with a smile. He instructed the entire group to form a circle and link hands together with each other. One of the Anbus grabbed his left hand and Kushina grabbed his right. It was going to be quite exhausting to transport these many people at long distances, but he drew strength from her warm hand. Minato was quite surprised when he felt another source of chakra linking up with his own and giving him energy. He looked at the redhead and saw she was looking forward, but that hadn't stopped her from giving him chakra. Maybe, just maybe, this trip to Azu could make them start over again. The next second the entire group vanished in a bright yellow flash. 2 days later, Sea of Azu. Hiden could feel his bee grow further and further as he watched the shores of Azu in the faraway distance. He didn't care why his lord had asked him to fight, because it was another great opportunity to spill more bee in his lord's glorious name. He still couldn't help but smile as he remembered butchering the Konoha shinobi. Their fear, their pain, their helplessness had made him enjoy them even more, and he hoped to do the same to these Kumo bastards. He looked around to see his other cult members were also equally thrilled for the upcoming fight. Even the other Akatsuki lower-level members were eager to fight. They were currently sailing towards their Dark Lord's homeland on a big ship. It had taken quite a lot of money to procure this vessel, which could carry the entire Akatsuki army along with their horses. But the Dark Lord had insisted the end result would be worth the cost. And who were they to question the Dark Lord? Speaking of their lord, he was standing at the front of the ship alongside Kisum. Hiden approached towards them and saw his Dark Lord glancing in the faraway distance. Hiden couldn't see anything there, but the way Kisum was grinning and the ice-cold look in his lord's eyes hinted something was indeed present there. "Seems Kumo is not completely foolish," said Naruto. "What should we do? Our ship is not built for combat, certainly not against those many naval vessels," suggested Kisum. "We will kill anyone who gets in your way, Dark Lord," proposed Hiden eagerly, and raised his scythe. The other Akatsuki forces were about to join up when their lord raised a hand, stopping them in their tracks. The sheer amount of intent he leaked made him take a step back. "There is no need for any of you to rest just yet." Hiden felt a chill down his spine on hearing that ice-cold voice. His lord was going to do something dangerous, he could feel it. The Akatsuki forces saw several vessels bearing the flag of Kumo appearing on the horizon. It seemed the world's largest military had deployed the naval forces to keep intruders out of Azu. Kisum gripped his sword for the upcoming bee fight, but was stopped when Naruto slowly lifted himself from the deck. The new Akatsuki members were jawed as they watched their leader actually rise higher and higher in the sky. The boy was flying for Kami's sake. "I will personally handle this." Naruto allowed himself to fly higher and higher in the sky until he could see each and every Kumo ship on the horizon. There were dozens of them manned by experienced seamen and dangerous shinobi. He felt the coldness spread across his heart as he imagined these very people as his clansmen, his people, conducting horrible experiments on them. No, these were no shinobi, no human beings. These were monsters just like him. And today it was time they met an even bigger monster. "This is my justice," thought Naruto as he raised both his hands forward. This was his home, his lands, his sea. His water. He closed his eyes and focused on the energy around him. Conan had told him the only way to harness his true potential was to accept himself and become one with the force around him. And tonight, amidst these dark skies full of raging clouds, he felt more at peace with himself than ever. He felt the familiar pull of energy connecting with his own, and he allowed the connection to grow. Slowly the pressure in his sea continued to rise till the level that it became painful. But he didn't stop. Kisum's eyes widened as he sensed the monstrous build-up of energy around him. No, it was not around him but the entire sea. He glanced at the boy flying in the sky and was truly astonished at the level of advancement in him. They were no longer equals in power, Kisum knew it now. He saw Hiden raise his scythe as the Kumo ships drew closer and started announcing warnings to turn back or be destroyed. It would take less than a minute before a battle began between the two factions. But it would never happen. Kisum knew the decisive moment had arrived when he felt the wind stop. The raging waters of the sea stopped making sound and replaced the battlefield with an eerie silence. But despite the silence, Kisum could feel the roar. Feel pain. Kisum and Hiden stared with wide eyes as their leader gave out that monstrous cry full of hatred and pain. But that scream was not what stopped their breath but the thing that happened next. Gigantic volcanic waves of sea water erupted from right beneath the hull of each and every Kumo ship. Hiden and the cult members roared in delight as they watched the entire enemy fleet being decimated right before their eyes. Kisum watched S-jawed as the water tore through entire ships, through the F of each and every human on board those vessels. Showers of wood, rafts flew high across the ocean and fell wildly around the area in a gory fashion. Just like that it was over. An entire fleet destroyed. Hundreds of lives lost from the strike of one warrior. If the Yellow Flash was the ultimate shinobi, then his son was the ultimate monster. Kisum joined the cult members and the remaining Akatsuki as they knelt down and cheered for their fearsome leader. The Kiri swordsman saw him starting at the lands of Azu. And in that moment, he knew this man was out for B. Only the Kami could now save the remaining Kumo ninjas from his monstrous wrath. A day later, Kisum had seen and done many disturbing and dark things in his life. He had seen vengeful men, evil bastards, greedy but none of those monsters could stand to the one before him. He saw many of the new Akatsuki members watch in fear as their leader currently had an entire Kumo scouting unit in the air. The men and women were writhing in agony as Naruto's dark chakra destroyed their body both from the outside and within. The corrosive power made the skin wither away, their burning to ashes, but even then Naruto didn't stop. The boy was vengeful as he was loyal, and knowing these people had hurt his clansmen, he was giving each and every one of them a horrible death. Many Akatsuki flinched when Naruto reduced a boy the same age as him to ashes alongside the rest of the Kumo scouting party. The only ones who were currently enjoying these were the insane cult members and Hiden, who were laughing. Kisum had known there was darkness greater than the sea deep within the boy, however it was the moment he stepped foot on Azu that made it truly come out flooding. Their small army had already set up camp a respectable distance away from the village of Azu. A few unfortunate Kumo shinobi had been caught in Hiden's traps and paid for their mistake with their lives. When Naruto was finished the group of Kumo shinobi, he turned his demonic eyes to their squad leader. A pretty blonde with fair skin. There were tears rolling down her cheeks as she watched her entire unit be literally burned to ashes and scattered across these cursed lands. And when those demonic red eyes turned towards her, she literally begged Kami to give her a knife so she could end her life. Suddenly she felt a presence in her mind, and before she could understand what was going on, information pertaining to her remaining comrades within Azu, their positions, guard patterns, arms and the location of the Uzumaki prisoners. Everything was extracted from her brain. And when that was done and she regained her senses, she whimpered when that monster was right in front of her with his demonic red eyes. And he was holding a small jar within which a bright green flame was burning. She wanted to plead for her life, but his sheer presence had frozen her tongue. There was no mercy in his eyes or sympathy. Just pure hatred born out of immense pain. He took out his sword, and it was then she saw the Uzumaki clan symbol etched on it. Her eyes widened on this discovery and she trembled when he opened the cursed jar. Hiden was in heaven when he saw that beautiful green flame within the jar connecting with his Dark Lord's magnificent blade. Please. It's too late for that, he said with a finality evident in his cold tone. Her eyes widened in horror when the entire sword was lit alive in those green flames. Even from the small distance between them she could feel its heat. This was not ordinary fire, but something much worse. This is demon's fire. My people were masters in fuinjutsu and even alchemy. We had no intention of destroying your village, but you destroyed ours. Now I will use this legacy of my clan, and the best part about this weapon is that it never stops burning for 7 days, hissed Naruto darkly with a cruel smile. The woman screamed, but nobody would ever hear her voice courtesy of the silencing seals around the entire camp. The monster gently touched her cheek and looked her right in the eye. You butchered and my people, it is justice that you receive the same favor from me. Kumo will receive not an ounce of mercy from me because you didn't give any to my people, knowing that your entire nation will burn just like you. He plunged his flaming green sword right inside the woman's sea, and the scream she gave was horrifying. Kisum flinched but didn't look away as he watched green flames erupt within the woman's body. She screamed horribly as her inner started to burn from within. Her organs started to melt, her bee started to boil, but she didn't. Her agony and painful screams continued for several minutes as the men watched. What was once a beautiful woman was reduced to a gaunt skeleton whose skin started to peel away, but even then she didn't. Whatever those flames were, Kisum was terrified of them. If the Akatsuki members didn't fear their leader, then they did now, for he was merciless and cruel to their enemies. Hidden and his cult laughed hysterically, having been more than pleased at the woman's suffering. It was a bitter truth of this twisted world that humans were even capable of such brutality. It was pain and suffering that reduced him to this level, but it had to be stopped. He grabbed a sword from one of the Akatsuki and walked towards the burning woman whose screams would haunt him for the rest of his life. Before anybody could ask or protest, he plunged his sword deep inside her skull, thereby ending her life and stopped her suffering. He was horrified to see even the low-quality sword in his hand melted away in those green flames along with the woman's liquefied body. Kisum prepared himself to face Naruto's wrath for interrupting his justice, but to his surprise the boy's demonic red eyes changed back to their light icy blue. "You're too soft, Kisum," scolded Naruto, but there was no bitterness in his voice. Just plain annoyance. Making common soldiers suffer is a waste of our time. They are pawns who simply follow orders from the ones who truly chose to destroy Azu and conduct experiments on your people. Rain down your wrath on them and not these useless ninjas, said Kisum with a frown, as he stared at the disgusting molten corpse. Whatever hatred he was on vanished as the boy gave out a tired sigh. Kisum could understand why he was behaving like this, but quite frankly they had better things to do than useless weaklings. And looking at the rest of the Akatsuki folk, none of them had the guts or will to get their leader back on track except for Kisum. "Did you discover any information?" asked Kisum pointedly. "The fleet we destroyed had 220 of their ninjas on board. We've also K-50 of their scouts, so their numbers are around 700. The Kinkaku squadrons man the borders of the village and the rest of the ninja guard my clansmen," informed Naruto. Kisum was impressed, but then again this was expected of the boy if he was to be their leader. "Who commands these forces?" asked Kisum seriously, knowing the enemy commander meant a lot in any battle. "Yugito ni, the Two-Tails Jinchuriki." Naruto smiled when that revelation shocked Kisum and the rest of his followers. Battling Kumo ninjas and Kinkaku squadrons was one challenge, facing off against a Jinchuriki was a whole different battle. "Do not be afraid. I will personally handle her," promised Naruto with a finality to his voice that didn't leave room for doubts. After the way he had their enemies just now, there was not a single voice of hesitation or objection. Just the way he liked. Even Kisum, having seen how powerful he had become, gave a nod. "Get some rest and guard our camp. We attack tomorrow night," ordered Naruto. The men almost ran away, being too afraid to be near their angry leader right now. Kisum sensed his tension, his pain, his unending anger, and simply gestured for them to walk away towards the edge of the camp. Naruto complied. When they were away from the other Akatsuki, Kisum saw the raw pain in the boy's eyes as he stared at his village in the faraway horizon. Even from this afar, Kisum could see the village had been plundered. Large chunks of buildings were burnt, broken walls, and a sense of doom as well as constant suffering loomed over what was a flourishing village. Despite not being an Azu ninja, Kisum felt sorry for the village and knew his own village had a hand in this tragedy. "I will build it back." The boy made that promise as a lone tear fell from his eye. He wanted nothing more than to ride now and save his people. Even making them suffer for a day longer was painful for him. But it had to be done as his men needed rest and time to prepare. Kisum smiled on seeing that so much death and destruction had not deterred the boy's spirits to make his village grow back from the ashes. "How will you do that?" asked Kisum curiously. "By restoring the third Azukage, Katsuro-sama, to his rightful seat. He can lead us back to our former glory," said Naruto faithfully. "What if your leader is not there? What if he's or missing?" questioned Kisum. He saw the boy clenching his fist and adopting a pensive gaze as he entertained that harsh reality. "Then I'll find someone who can be the new leader. The fourth. What about you? Naruto frowned on seeing Kisame smile as the Kiri ninja said that. What about me? Asked Naruto confusedly. Kisame continued staring at him with that same strange smile, and it was then Naruto realized what the man was hinting. He stared wide-eyed, which only made Kisame laugh. I'm a bastard, not a true Uzumaki, said Naruto sadly. You will be if we win this, countered Kisame. My clan doesn't like me much. They probably hate my guts, said Naruto with a small laugh. The third Uzukage made you the leader of the survivors because he knew you had what it takes to lead the Uzumaki to a new future. That you will be strong enough to make them rise again. I got my people K. I failed, protested Naruto bitterly, his guilt making his voice heavy, and drew his eyes to the ground. Not all of them. Naruto didn't dare raise his eyes and continued staring at his home soil. The faces of all those he had failed to protect flashing before his eyes. What Kisame was proposing was not possible because he was not worthy of that. Maybe Nagato or some of the other senior Uzumaki if they were still alive. A cold wind brushed past the two men as Kisame stared again at Uzu. Soon enough, you will be asked to make difficult choices. Decisions which will shape not just your future but your clans as well. Choose wisely, Lord Fourth. Irritated, Naruto looked up to rebuke Kisame but found himself alone. Even so, the Kiri swordsman's words still rang clearly in his heart. If Katsuro-sama, the third, was truly gone or missing, then his people would need a new leader. And they deserved someone better than a monster like him, deserved better than a bastard son. Maybe Nagato could become the fourth. His friend had a calm mind and ability to think on his feet. He was well versed with the clan's practices and cultures. Nagato was a good fighter and was also respected among the village. Yes, if Nagato agreed and if the third was not there, then his friend would lead his people. Naruto knew he had ran away when his people needed him most. Someone like him should never obtain a lure as noble as the fourth Uzukage. He was born in darkness and shadows. The light was not where he belonged, unlike his friends. His duty was to protect the Uzumaki until his breath and create a new and better world for them. And when that was done, he would be ready to fade into the shadows and darkness where he belonged. But tomorrow he would fight the greatest battle of his life against an enemy army that outnumbered his own. Even so, no matter what cost he would have to pay, he would make sure his people were freed. They would know that as long as he drew breath, there would be someone willing to fight for their future. And his enemies would know how big a mistake they made by harming the Uzumaki. Yes, tomorrow Naruto Uzumaki would have his vengeance. If only the boy had known what fate had in store for him. Kushina had tears streaming down her cheeks as she watched her beautiful home in such a devastated state. Uzu was brutally plundered, but even in this despair she found hope as she watched actual Uzumaki being forced to form defensive protections outside of the village by Kumo shinobi. Her bee boiled on seeing her people by the bastards who had tried to kill her as a child. She had always loathed Kumo from the bottom of her heart, and now to see them treating her clansmen like cattle. But most of all, if her clan was alive, then maybe her son. Overjoyed and angered, she glanced at her comrades to see them staring at the shocking revelation with wide eyes. Minato was speechless at the discovery, and so were the silent Anbu. But it was Orochimaru who chose to break the first word. We must retreat now. Kushina had the snake's end within her hand before the Anbus could even blink. Orochimaru was shocked for once when he was literally lifted off his feet and held in the air by Kushina Uzumaki. Are you suggesting we abandon my clan? Asked Kushina, her eyes becoming red as the Kyuubi chakra started pouring in. We are already at war with Suna. We cannot afford another with Kumo, protested Orochimaru. He's right, Kushina-san. If we attack Kumo, then it will be an act of war by Konoha, said one of the Anbu helplessly. She saw the same helplessness in all of the Anbu's eyes, which made her reluctantly leave Orochimaru's end. But she was not gentle in putting the man down at all. Their opinion mattered nothing at all, for there was one man who could end that entire enemy army alone. The Yellow Flash found himself in another situation where he was being forced to choose between nation and family. The last time he had made a decision like this had costed him a son and the love of his life. But he could see it in her eyes, the desperation, the pain, the silent plea. You once told me that Konoha values comrades greatly. I have served the village my entire life. I still served after my son was stolen from me. Minato, said Kushina helplessly. Even if we free your clan, Kushina, our son could still be replied Minato dejectedly. His eyes widened when she stepped in front of him and laid an affectionate hand on his cheek. The tears falling from her eyes made her look like a silent angel asking for help in this midnight. Look at those people, Minato. They are Konoha's allies who stood by our village for decades. If we abandon them now, then what good is our village's word? Asked Kushina worriedly. I won't allow you fools to start a war, warned Orochimaru, as half of the Anbu also joined the snake by surrounding the former lovers. The rest of the Anbu who were fond of Minato drew their own swords and stood against the shocked comrades. Confusion was spreading fast and deep. Minato could feel the tension rising, but all he could see were her eyes. Come with me and meet them, offered Kushina. We will lose everything, Kushina, whispered Minato. She knew it. Konoha was never going to act against Kumo when they were already fighting against Suna on one front. The Uzumaki would never be freed and would continue to suffer at Kumo's hands. Despite his mind warning him, Minato could not help but entertain the thought of his son being alive in that village. His child suffering. The sheer thought made his bee boil, which made Orochimaru back away as he sensed the yellow flash's rising anger. Kushina waited for him, perhaps for the first time in years. What she had asked him of was everything he had worked for all these years. If he fought, he would lose Konoha. If he didn't, he would lose her forever along with their son. She could perhaps understand their helplessness when they were young, as their child was taken from them forcefully. Perhaps, they both had been weak, and standing here she could finally start to see how heartbroken he must have felt. But tonight was different. They were no longer those young shinobi with no power. They were strong and capable, both of them. Most of all, they were strong enough to make their own choices. Minato thought back of all those years he had trained and fought day and night to become the ninja he was feared today. He hadn't done all that for the village or for the Hokage, he had done it so he could one day be strong enough to get his boy back. Was his loyalty any worth to Konoha? He could alone end half of Kumo's entire army, and if Hiruzen-sama was here today, then perhaps the old man would choose heart above mind. Most of all, he couldn't help but feel this pull towards Izu. And he could not abandon Kushina again. Will the war we may start today be worth it? Asked Minato hesitantly. If you are by my side, then we both alone can end Kumo's forces even before they set foot on Konoha's soil, said Kushina fiercely, and Minato knew she was not wrong. He was the Yellow Flash and she the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Konoha didn't need an army to defeat Kumo as long as they had the two of them. For justice, said Minato with a faint smile. For our son. Orochimaru stormed through the Anbus, protecting Minato and Kushina in order to stop those two fools. Hiruzen would have his head if he allowed these two to start a war. However, his heart stopped when he reached a moment too late, as the couple disappeared in a bright yellow flash. And in that moment, Orochimaru knew. He was totally Akatsuki. My lord, over there, yelled Hiden urgently. Naruto's attention was drawn to the northern side of the village where he saw a movement. Grabbing a set of binoculars, he zoomed in on the location, and what he saw made him blink. He cleared his eyes again quickly and looked again, but the result was the same. What the hell? Thought Naruto in shock. Sitting atop his large wolf, he couldn't help but be stunned on seeing two lone figures charging either madly or valiantly towards Izu alone. The fact that those people were. Who are those damn fools? Asked Kisame irritatedly. This was not in their plan, and these new intruders were destroying Akatsuki's entire battle plan. My parents. The boy's voice was barely above a whisper, which only seemed to show his own shock at this completely unexpected scenario. The other Akatsuki missed hearing that, but Kisame didn't, as his head snapped towards his leader. Grabbing his own binoculars, the swordsman looked at the two charging ninjas. Undoubtedly, it was the Yellow Flash, which was expected considering the man was Naruto's father. But to think Kushina Uzumaki was this boy's mother. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki was well known across the elemental nations, even to the point that most ninjas were forced to remember her Idini. What should we do? Asked Kisame, truly confused. This works in our favor. Kumo will believe Konoha attacked its forces, thereby igniting war between them, said Naruto hesitantly. They could out there, warned Kisame. Naruto didn't say anything and simply continued to stare at his parents charging towards the Kumo defenses. He didn't know why they were here, or had they truly lost their mind. But after hating them for a long time, and to see them now doing something right for the first time in their lives made him smile. They were brave and powerful. But most of all, watching them charge in the battlefield with nothing but each other as support made him truly see for the first time the couple who gave him birth. He didn't know what the future held for them all, but in this moment he was proud of them. If only they knew they would on that battlefield no matter how powerful they were. Minato couldn't help but smile despite making a decision that might sound the end of his career. For the first time in his life he felt free to make a choice of his own heart. If he survived this, then maybe he would be branded a traitor, or a missing ninja or something worse. But if it gave the redhead beside him her happiness back, then he would gladly do that for her. Despite rushing towards an enemy stronghold, Kushina Uzumaki was smiling brilliantly. It warmed his heart to see the woman he had truly loved come alive again. Kushina. She looked at him and he was startled when for the first time in years he didn't see hatred for him, but admiration and pride for him. I'm sorry for everything. In that brief moment she saw he truly was sorry for being helpless in the past. He had made a horrible mistake and it would never make up for the crime they both committed, but he was trying to undo that by standing beside her tonight. Against Konoha, and against everything he stood for. Before she could say something, Minato raced forward. She focused ahead and saw the Kumo defenders were shocked on seeing who approached their position. Warning bells started ringing all over as Minato crossed the final borderline. The yellow flash took out his famous three-pronged kunai and used it to S the N of two Kumo Junin first. He used the now B weapon to S another female Chunin in the heart and jumped in order to avoid the horizontal S from a Kinkaku operative. Kushina saw the Kinkaku swarming towards her former lover in droves and it made her really angry. She called forth her Kyubi chakra and unleashed her chakra chains that tore clean through the B of the Kinkaku before they could even lay a hand on Minato. Activate the seals, you morons! Yelled a Kinkaku, as Minato swiped the man's head off his N. Kushina ducked as a hail of kunai went above her and frowned on hearing that strange order. She jumped high in the air and used her sword to S another one of the operatives clean in the heart. The Kumo woman actually headbutted Kushina violently, making the redhead stumble back. Kushina felt stars in her vision and wildly S her sword in defense. She felt another punch to the gut and was sent sailing away. However, the Uzumaki flipped in the air and watched as the Kinkaku female despite AS to the C was still charging towards her. They are truly relentless, thought Kushina, and remembered these warriors did manage to take out the Nadaime Hokage. Thinking about the Nadaime made her freeze. That Senju was said to be the creator of the Harasshan which Minato used today. She ducked again as the vicious Kinkaku tried to S her N with her own sword. Kushina unleashed her chakra chains and brutally S her opponent across her entire body. Her eyes widened when even then the Kinkaku charged towards her even as her B. Kushina ended the woman's misery by taking her head off with a clean swipe. She saw that Minato had also a dozen Kinkaku, but it provided time for 4 Kinkakus in the corner to finish their hand seals. Ketsugo no Adana Shiru, Great Seal of Binding. The Uzumaki was alarmed when the ground beneath her sucked her feet in. Moments later she was stuck in the ground which was draining away her Jinchuriki chakra. She snarled and tried to yank her legs out but it failed. She sent great amounts of chakra to break the seal and even used her own B to perform a counter seal, but nothing worked. Across the field she saw Minato was equally alarmed as he threw his famous kunai but he couldn't teleport. He was just as stuck as she was in the ground with his own chakra being sucked away. Had the Uzumaki specially developed seals like these which were now being used by Kumo against them? She narrowed her eyes when dozens of Kinkaku surrounded them both from all sides. Their leader, apparently dressed in a black uniform, sent a kunai her way. Kushina raised her sword to deflect and was shocked when the weapon exploded. She could distantly hear Minato screaming the same as her as all around and the Kinkaku started raining down exploding tags. With their chakra stuck, they couldn't properly defend themselves. But she had not come this far to lose. Minato was B heavily from the forehead when he heard Kushina roar. With great power, she unleashed monstrous amounts of chakra that sent Kinkakus sailing away like needles. He was going through his own set of hand seals in an effort to break away from the seals that bound him. It was then he heard the horn. The surviving Kinkaku smirked at them as Minato looked back to see a sight that stopped his heart. Kushina. The redhead urgently looked at him on hearing his alarmed voice. He pointed in a particular direction, and when she looked, she saw the gates of a zoo opening and out came hundreds of Bikumo ninjas. She saw Yugito Ni standing on the tall wall of her village glaring down at the two of them. The enemy had expected a counterattack from Konoha, considering Azu was their sworn ally. To think they had even went as far as to make preparations to stop the Yellow Flash and Kushina herself. Just how far had they plundered her clan's secret jutsu? The Uzumaki clan was feared for their kinjutsu, and as she lay trapped in this seal alongside Minato, she could understand why people feared her clan. They both stared at each other grimly. They were trapped in a bad position with hundreds of enemy charging towards them with B in their eyes. Minato renewed his efforts to break through the seal's holding and back, even as Kushina used every ounce of her strength to raise dozens of chakra chains in the air. If the Kumo idiots imagined their victory, then they were mistaken. Yet even as she prepared to defend, she was a little startled by the sheer number of enemy charging towards them. She roared a battle cry and raised her sword. Akatsuki. Kisame was stunned to see the enemy actually managing to trick the Yellow Flash. Just how many lost sealing jutsu had Kumo stolen from the Uzumaki? One's powerful enough to stop even a man as dangerous as Minato Namikaze in his tracks. Looking at the only Uzumaki near him, he could see the boy was not surprised. In fact, he was expecting something like this. Yet Kisame also watched how tightly Naruto has gripped his wolf's fur. The beast itself was growling madly as if sensing his rider's anger and discomfort. But it was when they watched hundreds of Kumo ninjas charging to end the two Konoha ninjas that Kisame noticed something changed. Naruto's hesitancy vanished. "Don't," warned Kisame. The boy's ice blue eyes turned pitch red as he gave the most hateful glare to the approaching enemy forces. Something had snapped within the boy, and Kisame diverted his horse in order to stop him. Higher! The white wolf roared on his master's command and surged forward in a flash. Kisame watched in disbelief as the reckless boy charged alone. "Follow the Dark Lord!" cheered Hiden madly. The Jashinist and his cult brothers roared manically and charged after their leader happily on their own horses. That left a furious Kisame standing with several new members of the Akatsuki who were utterly confused. Cursed Kisame. Yet he turned his horse to address the dozen-odd nervous men and spoke clearly by unleashing his own sword. "Follow the commander." Answer the Akatsuki charged. Crushing all plans, all rationalism, every strategy, they charged. For they knew they were more scared of the man atop that wolf rather than outnumbering enemy forces. Kisame gulped as he watched Naruto, who was riding madly far ahead of his army. The Uzumaki were known for their temper and madness, and as Kisame watched the boy draw his clan's sword and alight it in the flames of hell fires, the Kiri ninja knew Naruto had gone mad. Kushina had her sword raised in order to defend herself against the large enemy army. Her chakra chains raised in the air were also waiting for a brutal fight. But to her utter shock, she saw the enemy soldiers come to a sudden halt. She saw their eyes were drawn to something high in the sky. Minato had also noticed this bizarre sight and drew his gaze to the sky to freeze in return. For there in the dark sky was the symbol of a very familiar skull burning with green flames. He had seen this symbol once before, and it was the time when he lost Kakashi. Could it be? He looked behind to see the Kinkaku surrounding him at his rear being raised violently in the air. Behind those men at a distance in the battlefield was a wave of darkness. Riding atop an abnormal large wolf was a very familiar ghoulish masked boy with bright red hair. In his hand was a sword burning in green flames, which he pointed straight towards the struggling Kinkaku in the air. Bolts of green flames shot from the sword, hitting the Kinkaku directly. Minato flinched when those men and women started burning horribly. One lone Kinkaku who was left on the ground charged towards the enemy but froze when the giant white wolf jumped at him. The beast tore the man's head in a shower of B even as the rider sitting on it used his burning green sword to wrest the poor Kinkaku's body in half. Death! The demon boy roared as he continued his lone charge against the enemy army, which took several steps back on seeing their best warriors so horribly in front of their eyes. Without sparing a single glance at either of them, the boy charged ahead, but not before shooting green flames from his sword that struck the ground beneath both Minato and Kushina's feet. The former lovers watched the green flames burning deep inside the ground only to destroy the hidden seals holding them both captive. When that was done, the green flames transformed into a short message and kept on burning. I always repay my debts. Shocked, they looked at the boy who was charging towards the enemy army fearlessly. Seconds later, from all around them, hundreds of other warriors charged after the boy with ferocious roars. For UZU. Naruto threw his sword forward with all his might and watched as the weapon struck the frontal line of enemy forces. And exploded. The green flames blasted everywhere, consuming dozens of Kumo shinobi in their heat. As they ran pitifully to save themselves, it led to the collapse of their entire frontal line. Unleashing his twin spare swords from Ghost's back, he continued his charge forward, much to the horror of his foes. He grinned savagely as Ghost, his wolf, brutally knocked away any ninjas that tried to stop his charge. The wolf was not only fast but monstrously strong, as with every hit Naruto could hear bones of his foes breaking. As he pressed forward, he dipped his twin special blades in the green flames that were spreading across the battlefield. With a swift strike, he beheaded 2 Kumo ninjas instantly. He looked behind only to smile as his private army glided through the disarrayed enemy forces. The panicked Kumo forces were helpless as Akatsuki riders ran fast on horses and their blades rained down death on everything in their way. Further behind, he could see Minato and Kushina was still in shock at his arrival along with his army. He owed him a debt for giving him life, and today he had repaid that debt by saving theirs in return. Whatever connection they had shared with each other was tonight destroyed. He respected them a little for doing the right thing for once in their life, but they were no longer needed. This was his home, his people, his fight, so he waved his hand dismissively in the direction which was a clear message for them to leave right now. When he turned to march forward, he saw a huge explosion that sent large chunks of his forces flying wildly in the air. Dust and bee littered across the battlefield. Great balls of fire raced from the smoke, striking down even more of his forces. As the dust settled, he saw a giant twin-tailed cat standing proudly in the battlefield. The monstrous blue cat gave a roar which sent many of his riders sailing away, including Kisame. However, it was the person standing atop that giant cat that made Naruto's heart stop. "Who the F is that idiot?" asked Hiden angrily, as he sa Kumo Chunin in half. The third Raikage. Several Akatsuki took steps back on hearing their leader reveal the identity of their foe. It was the Kumo forces who roared on seeing their leader arrive and stood as one. The difference one man could make. Naruto jumped off his wolf and walked alone towards the Jinchuriki in Biju form and its cage sitting on top. The third Raikage watched keenly as what appeared to be the enemy commander walked forward. It was a boy barely 15, but his bright red hair was a very strong hint as to who he was. The Kumo leader didn't know how any Uzumaki had survived the M apart from those held prisoners. What was worse, this boy had managed to assemble an army of his own. "You all will s here," roared the third, earning loud cheers from his own ninjas. Much to his surprise, the boy paid his declaration no heed and continued walking forward and slowly started rising in the sky. The Raikage raised his eyebrows in surprise, as not just the boy started flying but the sheer amount of malicious chakra that leaked from his boy took the form of a demonic skull. Raising his twin blades burning in green flames, he glared with utter hatred at each and every enemy. There was no fear, no hesitation, no mercy in those dark red eyes. "It is you who shall s here," warned the boy. The Raikage actually smiled on the boy's threat. Finally, a foe that was fearless and with such immense dark power as well. Even from this distance, he could sense the sheer power of this boy. And it made him ask, "Who am I fighting?" challenged the Raikage. The boy stared at him for a long moment, and the Kumo leader felt his enemy smiling behind that ghoulish mask. For a second, he thought the boy would refuse, but was proven wrong when the boy touched the edge of his mask. As the mask tumbled down to the ground, the Raikage saw a young boy with pale white skin that shined in the night. Those bright red hair flew wildly in the air as the boy with dark red eyes like a demon raised his burning swords in the air. "I am the sword of this village." The Kumo shinobi saw the green flames rising from those swords and start to create something around that demonic skull made up of dark chakra that was floating behind the boy. The protector of the Uzumaki blood. Kisame saw the flames giving birth to a very familiar symbol that was famous throughout the elemental nations. "I am the shield that shall rise to protect this village from all enemies." The Raikage's doubts became reality as the Uzumaki symbol came alive behind the boy in bright green flames. The sight of those dangerous flames swirling around the demonic skull made a cold shiver run down the hearts of every man. "As long as I live, The Uzumaki won't fall. A serene smile came on the boy's face as he breathed in the fresh air. He was out of the darkness, standing in a place where he truly belonged. So, for the first time he looked proudly in each and every eye and raised his swords proudly. I am Naruto Uzumaki. And this is my home. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.